Eagle Nation, let me ask you a question, okay? If you had to pick one player on either side of the ball this upcoming season to have a breakout year, maybe a guy who's going under the radar who you think could really impact the success of this team, who would it be? Give me your thoughts down below, because today we are going to go over 5 players who I believe are going under the radar and are the X factors of this team coming into this season. Welcome into A to Z Philly. I'm RB. Do us a favor, like the show if you do enjoy the content, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Now, I want to talk about 5 players, and I feel like if you threw this question out to 20 different people, 20 different answers would come back in. Like, there's no right answer, right? When I think about X Factor, I think about players that are kind of in the balance, right? If they have a great year, it could really give your team a boost. But if not, you know, it's probably going to hurt your team, but it may not, depending on the position. Like, I'm not going to come out here and pick the obvious ones, right? I'm not going to pick the stars, the Jaylen Hurts, the A.J. Browns, the Devontae Smiths of the world. I'm going to try to get a little bit creative today. Now, if you pick those players, you're not wrong, right? Like, Jaylen Hurts really could be an X factor in some ways if you don't believe he's the guy. But I already have the belief that he is the franchise quarterback and he is going to be the guy for a long time. So I'm not really worried. But there are players where I think if they really step up and shock a lot of heads this year, you know, it could really give this team a huge boost and bring them back to where they want to go. So these are not in any particular order, but just for the fun of it, we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. And I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert, right? We've talked about him multiple times. I think Dallas Goedert is a huge X factor for this offense because all the focus is on A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, right? And now you add in Saquon Barkley and you have that monster out there on the offensive side where, you know, even if Jaylen Hurts can improvise and use his legs at some points, I know they don't want to do that a lot anymore. You then have 4 different avenues where you are really, really dangerous, right? It's going to be hard to game plan against that if you're going through the necessary, you know, adjustments on offense and actually running an actual scheme, right? And a playbook, which they did not do last year. But I feel like Dallas Goedert gets forgotten about. Like, this guy a couple years ago was being talked about as like a top 4, top 5 tight end, right? There was the whole conversation with Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert is really freaking talented. And I feel like last year they never utilized him, right? A lot of people will say he had a down year last year. I don't really agree. Yes, his stats were worse, but he just was not used correctly. Like, you have to use him on first downs and second downs and help cut some of this yardage. And instead of going 3rd and, 15 quarterback keeper, like, use Dallas Goedert on first down to get 4 or 5 yards and just make him keep the defense honest. Like, that's what Dallas Goedert should do. He is a great route runner. He has great hands. He's athletic, right? You know, he'll drop some balls once in a while, but once you let this guy get going, which I feel like they have not done for some time, you know, there's no reason we can't have a couple Dallas Goedert games this season. So I really think Goedert's impact will be huge. And if he has a prolific year, especially, you know, looking for a contract and things of that nature, so he'll probably be motivated more, I think it's only going to help boost this offense even more and make them one of the best in the NFL. So let's go ahead and now flip to the other side of the ball. And we'll go on defense. Number 2, I have Isaiah Rodgers. This guy is a big question mark, right? But there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of potential. When you go back and look at how he was ranked as one of the best corners a couple years ago, then he had the whole situation where he gets suspended, right? And Eagles essentially chip in, get him for nothing. He's been saying the right things. He's been doing the right things. He's been leading some of these guys. Isaiah Rodgers can either be an outside corner for this team or a slot corner, right? It all depends on the growth and development of Quintin Mitchell. Like, how quick will he be ready to go? Hopefully from day one, right? But I think Isaiah Rodgers is going to be a piece that you can move around, like a chess piece for Vic Fangio. And based on what we saw before, keep in mind, he's still very, very young. Isaiah Rodgers could end up being a wonderful investment. Like, imagine paying so low for Isaiah Rodgers and maybe he ends up being a really solid corner for the next several years. Whether Quintin Mitchell is ready to go or not, I feel like Isaiah Rodgers will have a role on this defense. I feel like he will be getting snaps and he will be making plays no matter where he's plugged into. He seems like a guy who's bought into that team mindset, and I'm just really excited to see, how he's used this season. But Isaiah Rodgers being a useful corner for this team which has not had a lot of them, especially as of late, right? I mean, James Bradbury kind of just flunks and goes downhill. If they can get production out of Isaiah Rodgers, it takes some pressure off guys like Quintin Mitchell and Cooper DeJean from day one and just gives more of a vet presence. So I'm ready to see what Rodgers can do, and I think he's going to be a huge X factor for this team. And just kind of carrying on with that, my third guy actually is Quintin Mitchell. Now, again, I know the expectations are going to be high, right? He was a first-round pick in the 20s, but he was scheduled to go in the top 10, right? Like, everybody was talking about this guy as maybe the best corner in the draft, top 2 corner. But if he can step in from day one and already show those traits of being a future lockdown corner and being a Pro Bowl corner, and especially get ready to take the reins over when Darius Slay retires, it's just going to help this Eagles team so far in advance. They have not made this type of investment into a young corner. And if this investment pays off, there's no reason why Quintin Mitchell can't become one of the leaders of this defense, even from a very young age. And, you know, just having Slay and Mitchell, if both of them are just having stellar seasons, I see no reason why this defense can't catapult back to where they were a couple years ago. The fourth guy I'm going to go with is Cam Jurgens. It's always hard to fill the shoes of a legend, but this one's pretty self-explanatory. If Cam Jurgens shows what he did a couple years ago in the preseason, no, we're not asking you to be on the level of Jason Kelce, but you've been sitting for 2 years in the shadows, learning from a great. You need to come in and play very good football. That's it. Can't make mistakes, right? Offensive linemen aren't judged on stats. Usually when we don't hear your name, you're doing your job. Cam Jurgens needs to come in and just play sound football. He needs to be the leader for that offensive line. He needs to step into a big role and just really start to take charge, right? Like, if Cam Jurgens isn't having a good year, then we're going to have concerns about that offensive line, because we took it a little bit for granted, not at our own fault, but when you have a player like Jason Kelce on your team for so long, it just kind of gets ingrained, right? You get used to that success every single week. You get used to just having a rock, you know, snapping the ball to your quarterback. And who says this transition is going to be easy? It may not. So, look, Cam Jurgens has a lot of pressure on him this season, but I believe he'll live up to it. A lot of hype coming out of school, and now he's gotten the experience by just sitting there and learning. So I'm excited for Cam Jurgens, and he needs to have a big year. Lastly, I'm going to say the Eagles' defensive line. I was trying to pick one player, and we talked about Jordan Davis last week, but you know what, man? Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, those are the main two I'm looking at. Because you make a big free agent acquisition in Bryce Huff. But let's be honest, man. If you're young guys, if you're former first-round picks, who, by the way, started off last season as 2 of the best defensive linemen in the NFL, then injuries came along. The Eagles collapsed, right? Their defensive coordinator situation was tumultuous. If you give these guys some stability and you give them opportunities to go out there and get to the quarterback and make big plays, right? And they show that potential and they live up to it and they're in good shape and they stay healthy. There's no reason this Eagles defense, especially this defensive front, can't get back to being superior and can't get back to haunting quarterbacks on a weekly basis. I understand these are big shoes to step into, right? Some of your vets retire, some guys move on. These guys need to really step up and take advantage. You know, they need to take a hold of it. They need to take the reins and become leaders on this defense from a young age. It'll only help this team so many years into the future. And I think Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis already have that chemistry from college. I think they're going to be a tandem. Some people may say it's not fair to expect all of this of them, but you know what? You come in as first-round picks. You're asked to produce. Obviously, Jalen Carter had a really great start last year and got injured. And Jordan Davis now has had trouble staying in shape. So if these two rise to that next tier and rise to that next level as young interior linemen, there is just no reason that this Eagles defensive line can't take a huge jump and get back to where they were a couple years ago. So at the end of the day, those are really my main X factors for the team. I probably could give you a handful more, but who do you think are the most important pieces that could kind of really determine which way this team goes? Give me your thoughts down below. Also, real quick, let's go ahead and give a shout out to our sponsor of today's video. It is the great BetMGM. Enjoy all your favorite sports like never before at BetMGM. Sign up using our code ATOZPA and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you do not win your first bet. When you register with BetMGM, you'll get instant access to parlays, live bets, player props, and daily boosted odds specials. And With BetMGM at your fingertips, every play and every game matter more than ever. So go ahead and find out why BetMGM is the king of sportsbooks. Sign up today with the bonus code ATOZPA and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you do not win your first bet. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions.